Alrighty, go. It's 5:29. Just like I said, I'm on time tonight, guys. Got my Miami tea going on over here. Figured a way to get all my streams on one platform here. Finally, for being a generation millennial, whatever I am, I sure sometimes don't know how to use technology, right? So, welcome in. My name is Steve Pintado. I am the host of the Fantasy Coaches Podcast, and also a really great member of Unwrapped Sports Network. And I got like a whole 40, had to be on the dot today. If you've been listening to these are some player or team profiles for fantasy football, quick values, quick takes, quick everything within the first 15, 20 minutes. And I had to do it on 15, 20 minutes because I do have to go on to another stream following this. I'll mention that at the end. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I've been doing this for day 5 now. And, the last 4 teams were really fun to talk about, a lot of fantasy relevant players, but we're talking to Steelers tonight, and they sure have a lot of fantasy relevant players as well. Just give me 1 second. I just want to make sure my streams are all working on one platform, right? And that everyone has a shot to tune in today because it's a lot of fun. So just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, yeah, looks like we're working here so far. So thanks for tuning in, guys. If you have questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and I will try to answer them as best as I can in the time frame that I have going on. So thank you for that. And like I said, we'll talk about the Steelers tonight, and we're starting with Ben Roethlisberger right now. And everyone seems to be a little down on Big Ben. He had the elbow injury this past offseason after playing about a game and a half into the 2019 season. And yeah, everyone just seems to be really down on Big Ben. And I get it. He's 38 years old. He's coming off a big major elbow injury on his throwing arm. He hasn't played football in almost a year now, it seems like. So things can be a bit down on him. There are negatives to that part, which you don't really want to see too often. But Big Ben Roethlisberger is definitely someone you still need to take a full advantage of in terms of fantasy football this coming season. And the reason is because what happened just 2 years ago? He threw for over 5,000 yards, just was a top-end fantasy quarterback. Granted, yes, he had Antonio Brown. He had one of the better wide receivers in the game, but don't fault him for that. I mean, he could still see some really great work and do some really great things overall here. So, one second. So basically, the biggest thing is that when it comes to Big Ben, what are you getting in terms of value? You're getting a guy who has been a stud over the years and has a great core of receivers right now. I mean, probably one of the better ones right now. And when you're looking at it, it is something to take full advantage of because he's got Juju, he's got Deontay Johnson, he's got James Washington, Chase Claypool, he's got Eric Ebron now, he's got a great core of wide receivers on the field right now. I mean, he's got a lot of things going on right now. And how is that not an advantage to him? As long as he can stay healthy, and that's the major key. But where are you drafting Big Ben right now? You're drafting Big Ben in the late rounds, nowhere early, nowhere close to being a top-tier player right now. You're getting him in those bottom rounds, and that's kind of what makes him a really good fantasy quarterback this season to take a shot on in those, rounds 12 to 13, because he could be someone who, steps up and has a top 10 season because he has that in him still. Again, the injury is a major concern, but, he's been throwing well. The coaching staff has praised him from coming along as quick as he has. Everything seems to be looking the right way for him to take that level back to what he is. So you're expecting a guy who could throw at least 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns this season. Give me that all day in round 12 and 13. That's, your guy who's going to probably throw close to 550 passes this season. I want that on my team here, and I'm getting him at a huge discount than, going for a guy like, Josh Allen that's early on. He might have the rushing upside. You're going to get him in round 7, though. Big Ben, you're going to get round late. He doesn't have the rushing upside anymore, but he just has that demeanor to be a really good fantasy quarterback once again. And if you're sleeping on him, you need to stop. You need to make sure that if you're looking for a quarterback in a one quarterback league, I would trust Big Ben as my one. Granted, I'd probably want to grab a backup in case injury pops himself, but in a Superflex, he's a strong two. I mean, even in a one QB league, I'd want him because you're getting a great value for where he's at, and he can put that upside in his game still. So going over to the running backs now, because I talked a lot about Big Ben. I didn't expect to do that. We'll start with Benny Snells. And what was Benny Snells? He was a rookie last year, kind of a two-down back to him. And, he was a top 30, running back between weeks 12 to 14 with Connor out with injury. He had 4 games with 65 rushing yards. He seemed like he can handle the early working down role, which is really good to see, which is something that I really liked it in a at least a standard league player. But he came off with his college career. We had 3 straight 1,100-yard seasons, so he can run. Again, he wasn't the most efficient runner this past season at 3.9 yards per carry, and he really wasn't involved in the pass game too much. 4 targets all season. So looks like he's capped on what he's able to do overall in terms of fantasy football for us this year. So where do we see him this season? Unfortunately, I don't think he has a big enough role to be somewhat relevant as a flex option or RB3 or 4 right now. He's probably an RB5, RB6 with the upside that James Conner does get hurt. I think Benny Snell does have the job. I don't think they're going to go to like an Anthony McFarland, who we'll talk about in a second. But I think if the early work gets thrown away from James Conner due to injury, I think that goes to a guy like Benny Snell. So that's where you see Benny Snell. He's probably an undrafted guy unless you hear more things going about anytime in the future. But again, it doesn't seem to be moving that way. James Conner is the starter, and then Benny Snell will sub in if injury does occur. Anthony McFarland, though, this is a guy who could see some value on the field, in year one. The kid was a highlight reel at Maryland, explosive runner, very dynamic, lightning in a bottle type of, running back, can hit that home run threat almost anytime he touches the ball. And if he's in open space, defenses are going to be upset with themselves because they're not going to be able to tackle him because he's going to run past you very quickly. But what does he not do? He's not a goal line guy. He's not a guy who is going to see touchdown upside unless he breaks one deep. And that's the concerning thing with McFarland on that note, is that he's basically the opposite of Benny Snell. He's going to be able to catch balls in the backfield, and he's going to be able to get the ball in space and do something really great with it. Like Benny Snell will be up the middle. Anthony McFarland would be more of the outside, out between the tackle runner. So when you look for him in fantasy this season, obviously James Conner, we mentioned, he's a starter for this year. But again, I think someone else needs to have the ball at certain points. Someone else, they're going to get this guy more involved. He was, somewhat of an earlier pick, you could say. And I think they'll create a situation to give him opportunity to see the ball go deep constantly. And that's something you really want to see in terms of fantasy, is being able to do something with the ball and make big strides with it. In terms of, your drafts this season, he's probably close to those last few picks to see if maybe something happens where he can just steal one to the house. Isn't going to be a consistent option week to week, but we'll have a blow-up games here and there. Again, last round pick kind of thing to see if maybe he sees a consistent role. But again, he probably could go undrafted in a lot of leagues this year. Jalen Samuel, he was the pass catcher for the team. If James Conner goes down, he was a pretty big pass catcher last year. I think he had one game, he had like 12 receptions in one game. I mean, the kid was insane last year. But, where do we see James Conner going into this season? Not James Conner, I'm sorry, Jalen Samuels. His role seems to be diminishing. 66 carries this season. I thought maybe if he saw the lead work, he could do more with it. But obviously, Benny Snell was brought in consistently, and his best upside is if he sees targets, and he only saw 57 last year. And with James Conner in and out of the lineup, if James Conner's healthy, I can't see him getting more than 30 something, 40 something maybe, and he's just not really fantasy relevant. Deeper man league, he's an okay PPR option because he had 47 receptions. At least 12. If that's 16 games, it's like 2 or 3 a game. Not the best, but the deep man league, you're really asking for much at the running back position as your RB4 or 5 there. But he's just really not draftable at this point. James Conner is, he's a true kid coming off of cancer over his career and really showing his worth overall. And what is the thing that we're looking at right now? Alex, thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. I'm seeing updates on my phone, guys. I can only see so many things now. I don't get the comment sections. I might have to go back my old ways so I can see the sportscast, so I can comment on your guys' welcoming in and questions if you have, because I'm not seeing them where I'm at. But in terms of James Conner, he was injury prone last year. He's been injury prone in the 2 years he's been here in the NFL. And yeah, you got to proceed with caution with this guy. I think he's an RB2, a little bit on the lower end with upside, but he's also got red flags to him. I mean, he needs to be able to stay on the field. I mean, if he can see 200 plus carries, yeah, he's going to be a pretty strong RB2, and he's got that passing volume. He's got 34 receptions in just the 10 games. Managed, if he played actually all those games, he probably only really played like 7 really. So the kid's got upside in the receiving game. He had 7 touchdowns last year. And I expect him to kind of bounce back, because when you have somebody like, James Conner playing behind Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodge, you're really not going to – people are going to focus on you a little bit more on the defense. So I think with Big Ben back really helps James Conner kind of see a little bit of a less stacked box, and maybe actually have some passing down, because he was really productive with Big Ben on the field in 2018. So his value is looking up. But again, there's a little bit of risk, because I don't know if he can handle that big workload that we want him to do as a real RB1. So he's more of an RB2, lower end, round 5, round 6 kind of player that I would love to get in those ranges. Going to the receivers now, I'm going to start with Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool, a big-bodied 6'4" receiver from Notre Dame. I mean, size is his strength. 4-year career grew really nicely in college. Has a big catch radius, basically a straight line speed to his game. Able to find success with contested catches, used his body to beat out defenders. Some of his weaknesses, though, that he doesn't have that great release or separation you would want. Dealt with the drops at times in college. Basically, he just needs to be able to hold on to the ball and body the defenders, which again isn't always the best thing going into the new year now, because as a wide receiver going into the NFL, because everyone's bigger. You're not going to be getting against a freshman defender in the NFL level. So he's got to learn to do other things to win the ball game. And I think he can with this offense here. I mean, this is a shot he could see starting job early on in his career, mostly for James Washington, if anything. And he has a real opportunity this year. And with Big Ben back, they've grown wide receivers very well over the years. Obviously, we've seen Juju, Deontay Johnson, now James Washington. We've seen a lot of great wide receivers starting to come up. So Chase Claypool could be the next in line for those really good wide receivers in Pittsburgh. In terms of this year, you're looking at maybe, again, a late round pick that will take him. I don't really see him being too involved now that the offseason really isn't there in this offense. So I expect him to kind of just be on the back burner until maybe midseason. And he's going to be a great midseason pickup, but not someone I want to draft per se with my first 16 picks in my draft. James Washington, third-year guy now. He led the receivers in receiving yards last year. Was that downfield threat for both Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodge. 16 yards per reception. He was a downfield kind of guy. He's also pretty big in the red zone a little bit too. Just a guy who was just kind of dominant in that area too. Seems like they really went his way a little bit more often than not. In those time frames, something to look into when it comes to James Washington. But if he can get past defenders, I mean, the man can score. But the fact is that he needs to get past defenders, and with the quarterbacks he had last year, I think with Big Ben, that should help a little bit as well to see maybe a couple more touchdowns. He only had 3 last year. You really want more than that last year, than that to really show your worth in terms of fantasy. But he had 700 yards. But Juju should be back and healthy. I think Deontay Johnson, we'll talk about in a minute, will take a bigger step than James Washington, unfortunately. And kind of comes in as that wide receiver 5, wide receiver 4. And he has upside. That's a good thing, is those later positions. And James Washington is someone that you can get late in your drafts and kind of just roll with him there and see maybe if he is the real target in this offense that, Deontay Johnson and James Juju Smith-Schuster go in the first 10 rounds. James Washington is going in the back half of this 13th, 14th round. So great value where you can get him for a guy who could see a big increase. Seems less likely with the guys in front of him, but has that opportunity in him. Deontay Johnson. Wow, what a surprise! The rookie did some really good damage overall, and uh, he was the bright spot on this weak offense here. Led receivers in most receiving categories. It was number one in target separation in the league. And he did all this with backup quarterbacks and a backup. I mean, the second worst passing offense. He had one of the worst catchable rates at 72%, which was good for 81st in the league. So he had some issues last year dealing with running situations. But he does remind me of Antonio Brown. I know people keep on mentioning it, but he really does. Watching the film, again, he doesn't have maybe as quick as Antonio Brown, but the separation that he gets when he runs his routes is one of the best I've seen. And he's got a shot to make a real impact in this team. He's going to be on the outside. He's going to probably deal with some bigger receivers, unfortunately, defenders. But he's going to have Big Ben back, who, we've seen Big Ben be a guy who can do a lot with the ball and get his wide receivers super involved. I mean, 605 touchdowns on just 59 receptions. He had 92 targets. So you see how bad his receptions to target share was so bad last year that I think you're expecting an increase in that, and then I expect him to get well over 1,000 yards this year. Maybe not a high touchdown, but he should be a 1,000-yard guy and be a pretty solid wide receiver 3 this year in terms of fantasy. And then last but not least, Juju Smith-Schuster. We're getting close on time here. Got another 9 minutes on my end. Juju Smith-Schuster, we're almost at the 20-minute mark, so we better hurry up, actually. We started at 25, so we got 4 minutes, actually. Juju Smith-Schuster. Big disappointment last year. Again, we thought a regression was going to happen, but it wasn't all his fault. He had a down year. He had injuries. He had a backup quarterbacks all day long. I think he's still one of the top receivers in this game. I can't let 1 year with a lousy quarterback play, injuries really dictate who he is as a wide receiver. He performed well with Big Ben on the field, and he performed at times last year pretty well. But again, he had a lot of issues with bad quarterback play. With Big Ben back, I think you expect this guy to kind of get that 1,000-yard form that he showed before. Again, he also had a 72 catch rate, which is 85th in the league, so it was worse than Deontay Johnson. Again, he's going to be playing in the slot probably not going to see the most toughest coverage because the way he plays overall. Thanks, Alex, again for the favorite. I don't know if you did that again or not, but appreciate that. You favorited my stream. Thank you. Just Alex, with Juju Smith-Schuster, you're getting a guy I think is still a pretty strong wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. And last year, he actually played some pretty solid games. I looked at some of his game film, like, what did he do good? He played good against Stephon Gilmore, who apparently is the number 1 corner in the league right now. He played good against Marlon Humphreys from the Ravens, who's going to play twice a year. Those are some pretty tough corners. Yes, he struggled one game against them, and he also struggled against Cayman Hayward and Jalen Ramsey at times last year. Again, he was coming off various injuries, so it's hard to judge him off that. I still think he's a pretty good wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside that you're going to get in rounds 3 or 4 in drafts right now, and I think that's a pretty good value. If you give him in round 4, that's even a better value because I think he's going to bounce back. He's probably going to at least double what he did, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, pretty easily going into 2020. So, and then we go to the tight ends. The last 2 here, we're 2 minutes left. Vance McDonald, guys. Vance McDonald, didn't really show off much last year. After being a top 12 quarterback in 2018, actually, he didn't really do well. He struggled a lot last year. A couple tight end 1 performances. His biggest value is that he's going to be on the field during blocking situations because Eric Remer is no type of blocker. And that could lead to him having some, shortened games if you're in a deeper man league. If you're looking for a sleeper, not a sleeper, but a guy who could produce that many people, probably no one's talking about, maybe Vance McDonald could be that guy. Yes, he'll be there in blocking plays, but, if you do that with, play actions and stuff like that, maybe Vance gets an opportunity to see a couple red zone opportunities or a couple touchdowns, be somewhat productive in fantasy. Again, not a drafted guy right now, but just someone you want to keep your eye. Just keep your ear on. Don't keep your eyes on, but keep your ears on. Eric Ebron is definitely going to be interesting this year. Obviously, the 2018 season that he had was remarkable, and it was never probably do that again, but we all knew that. And if you drafted him high, shame on you because he wasn't going to do that. Yes, he had a pretty good start to his season overall, played very well, but in terms of, him doing what he was able to do last year, I just can't seem to be able to have that same production he had with 10-plus touchdowns. I think you're looking at a guy who's going to see 506 or 7 maybe touchdowns this season. the tight end position in Pittsburgh hasn't always been the most productive, but it's been pretty stable. So Eric Ebron, you're looking at him as not the most exciting back, tight end 2 in terms of fantasy. He's a tight end 3, really. I mean, he's got some value in this offense, especially in the red zone. But you're getting him in, like I said, around 14, 15, 16. I mean, you're taking him to be kind of that, tight end waiver kind of tight end. And I'm not looking for him to be a true stud in the offense because just so many weapons. And again, even with the 2018 season, Vance McDonald, the best you're going to get probably is a borderline or tight end 1 if everything goes right for Eric Ebron this season, just like Vance McDonald had in 2018. And that's basically all I'm going to see. I don't see him seeing that 2018 production. He could do better than his 2019. Again, he only played 11 games, so he's probably going to have a little bit better season. At 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, seems like a pretty solid overall. He'll finish in the top 20 more than likely. So that's what you see with an Eric Ebron-like individual. But that is the end of my stream, guys. I appreciate you guys for listening in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I sure do. Tomorrow will be on day 6. We'll be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot to talk about, obviously. A lot of great players we're going to mention overall in that one. So, and if you're tuning in all weekend long, I'm going throughout the Northeast, with tomorrow being the Eagles, then the Jets, then the Giants on Sunday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of Northeastern people we're going to be talking about this weekend. So I appreciate you guys for listening in tonight. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what time yet. Probably a little earlier than usual, but I will definitely let you guys know in advance if I can. Also, I will be jumping on another stream in the next 10 minutes. If you guys like the XFL, tune in. I will probably be on my stream here. Looking forward to that. We're going to be talking some, what the new purchase of the XFL with The Rock and how that all kind of works and what do we expect for the next season and how that will go about. So tune into that if you want to listen to that as well. Thank you guys for listening to this stream. I do appreciate it. Until next time, guys.